Welcome to Momentum Tonight. And what we are talking about today is food addiction. And what you're going to learn from this video is some key takeaways is what is food addiction? Do you have some issues with it? And if so, how do you overcome them? And that's critically important to having long-term success, especially when it comes to food, sugar, those sweet treats, things that you really want to be eating, and that is, how we need to overcome these things in our lives so that you ultimately live, look, and feel better. So, eating healthy and losing weight seems downright impossible these days. There are lots and lots of different food options out there. There are lots of marketing disclaimers out there that are going around, lots of tricky foods that are marketed to you to tell you that you need to be eating this food because it's healthy, or even think about like the chocolate or wine scenarios that in the news. One week chocolate's good, the other week it's not. Same thing with wine. So despite your best intentions, you end up repeatedly find yourself eating large amounts of unhealthy foods despite knowing that they might hurt you, even despite some of the marketing claims and whatnot. So really what happens here is the truth is that there's an effect of certain foods that the foods have on the brain, and it can lead to addiction. Addiction is a tricky thing here. I'm definitely not going to claim any knowledge or doctor's authority or anything like that. So if this is something, we'll just throw this out right now. This is something that you need to seek out further advice, which is one of the key points that we'll focus on down below. Then you need to do that. I can help in my own limited capacities, just dealing with lots of experience with working with people, and so therefore I'll help as best I can. So that's what we're talking about today. Food addiction can be a very serious problem, and it's one of the main reasons why people just can't control themselves around certain foods, no matter how hard they try. Okay, so what is food addiction? Well, food addiction is simply being addicted to junk food in the same way as drugs, or drug addicts could be addicted to drugs in that same type of capacity. Obviously, those are significantly different parts of the spectrum here, so don't want to lump anybody or put any connotations in there. It's just an analogy, but it really kind of involves the same triggers and pathways in the brain with the neurotransmitters, and a lot of the symptoms are identical, and that can cause some big issues. And so it's easily to relate to that person that is struggling with maybe some sort of a substance. I mean, basically it's a substance abuse issue and addiction. So food just being one of those. We'll just call it that instead of like a drug or alcohol or anything like that. Now, food addiction is kind of claimed to be new. Okay, so it's controversial as well. Because it's new, there aren't really any good statistics out because of it's just that newly relevant. But there's very similar to other eating disorders like binging, anorexia, bulimia, compulsive overeating, having unhealthy relationships with food, your emotional capacity with food and how that is. So ultimately, how does food addiction work? Well, ultimately it ends up driving around processed junk foods, and they have a powerful effect on the reward centers of the brain. Okay, so food goes in, brain lights up, and they even have multiple studies that show like different spots of the brain getting active based on what the food itself is doing to the brain, with sending neurotransmitters, the sugar, all the different hormones that you release in the body. One of the main neurotransmitters that gets released is dopamine, and that just gives you that real quick dopamine hit and makes you feel real good once it goes. And then what happens with us as humans, we are looking for more dopamine hits, okay? We want to find that dopamine hit and get it again and again and again. Water. You need lots of water. So I'm on my like 432-ounce jug today at least, maybe the fifth one. So my hands are my barometer, and they're starting to get dry and cracky, whether it's from my furnace in my house or just cold outdoors. So kind, friendly reminder, drink your water. Side note there, okay? Let's get back to the food addiction stuff. Foods that are most problematic are really typically junk foods. They're very processed. They lack a lot of nutrients. They are sugar or wheat based, or multiple times both. That's what our food industry ends up feeding us mostly. A lot of GMO, a lot of ultra sweet type foods, and this ultimately leads to very, very bad response for the body and the brain. One thing food addiction is not. It's not about a lack of willpower or anything like that. It's really caused by the dopamine signal. Like, it's hijacked in your brain biochemistry. So really, again, motivation and willpower kind of go out the window when you're dealing with this intense dopamine signal in the body and in the mind. And there's lots and lots of studies that kind of go about that. So it's super important to understand this, because if you don't, when those dopamine signals come about and this uncanny drive comes to eat these foods, then you know that we're going to have some real big issues. Now, there are 8 food symptoms of food addicts, and so what we're going to be talking about here is a couple of them, and what we want to look for in these is to see how, if you relate to any of them. Certainly we can all relate to every single one of them, but the severity of how we relate to them will obviously determine what the issue is, if some food issues are present. So there aren't really any type of blood tests or anything to diagnose food addiction. Just like there is it ends up just like same thing with like drugs and other addictions, but these are very behavioral symptoms. And so here's some 8 ones that I found that I think are pretty relevant for you. So you frequently get cravings of certain food despite feeling full or just having finished a nutritious meal. So you eat something and you get cravings. So even I kind of fall into this, like probably learned pattern of behavior is eating a meal, then wanting something sweet after it. Okay, I'm sure many of us have, that's how our restaurant, that's how our meals are designed. You have your appetizer, you have your main course, you have a dessert after, and so consequently, no matter what, you're always going to could trend that way. Secondly, when you give in and start eating the food you were craving, you often find yourself eating more than you intended to. Guilty as charged, okay? There's often times like, wait a minute here, I was only going after 1 or 2 cookies and I had the whole roll. Or, I was told today, and I totally agree with this, a serving of ice cream is half a cup, not half a gallon. And so that ends up being, we can kind of get away from ourselves if we're not really, really aware of what we're doing and why we're actually eating at that moment in time. When you eat food you're craving, excuse me, it says my storage is almost full on my phone. Back to us. When you eat food you're craving, you sometimes eat to the point of feeling excessively stuffed. Guilty as charged. I've probably overindulged a couple times. So things that I tend to overindulge in are baked goods, and that ends up getting the best of me. So um, I stay away from baked goods because I'm baked goods and I just don't match. So things like cookies and brownies, especially brownies, it's over for the brownies and for my stomach. So um, another one, you often feel guilty after eating this particular food. You find yourself eating it soon again. We've probably all had these moments of like, I'm not doing that again. Think of just like alcohol. You know, you overdo it, you get sick. You don't feel good, especially the next day. Um, but that bad experience isn't bad enough for you to persuade you not to do it again. So that can be pretty tricky. So the next one, you sometimes make excuses in your head about why you should eat something that you're craving. We can justify so many things in our life, and food is a very easy one. I've had a long day. Been very stressful. On a positive note, I want to celebrate. I want to go out and enjoy myself or enjoy the company that I'm with. It only comes around once a year. This is a special day. There's all sorts of different excuses that you can make that will keep you from what you're doing. So you have another one here. You've repeatedly tried to quit eating, or you even set rules around particular foods that have been unsuccessful. So like maybe Sunday's cheat day or Thursday's cheat day, or you have your cheat meal on this time or that. And by setting up these rules, you end up consequently creating failure, and that doesn't work. Another one, you hide your consumption of unhealthy food from others. Guilty. As a fitness professional and someone who regularly does this with their food, their nutrition, uh, chances are you probably don't know that I really, really enjoy cookies and I really enjoy brownies. I don't go out of my way to make them. I don't go out of my way to get them. But if they show up in front of me, again, chances are they're not going to do well. A short, quick story to this one. We had gotten tickets to the Rudolph show at the Civic Center this last month. And so we go there, and we ended up, it was 5 out of 6. So Emmeline was with a friend. She is my youngest daughter. She's 1. We felt that it might be a little inappropriate to take her to the Civic, despite it being a kid's Rudolph play. But so she goes over to a friend's house. And after the play, we drive over to go pick her up. It's about, I don't know, give or take 10 o'clock in the evening. And what we do from there is we pull in. Amber says, hey, Amber's my wife. Amber says, hey, I'm going to go inside. Does anybody want to come in? And I'm like, nah, there's no reason to. You're just going to pick Emmeline up. And she says, I think they're making cookies. Then all you hear is click, click, click. All 4 of us boys unclick, and we launch into the house. To end the story a little short here, I think between the 4 of us, I don't think Amber really participated. We probably consumed about 2 dozen cookies in a matter of like 10 to 15 minutes. Very true to the Parana name. I'm slightly scared of what's to come in the future, meaning 3 growing boys and their capacity to eat, along with mine as well, and it could be over for some parties or situations or places we go to. They have food. We're just gonna come in, eat, and then split. That's kind of how I foresee it, and I think it'll really happen that way. Just come in, eat, and then clear house, and then leave. Last up, the 8th symptom here. You feel unable to control your consumption of unhealthy foods, despite knowing that they'll cause you physical harm. I don't have this issue so much. If anything, this could kind of fall into an alcohol issue type thing. where you just end up drinking too much and you really are hungover the next day, not feeling good, throwing up, all those type of things. I've had a couple clients that have some pretty acute issues with gluten, and anytime they have gluten, guess what happens? It's not a good thing. It's really, really a very negative thing for them. And the one person, they actually will have something that has gluten in it, and within like 15 minutes, they are not in really good shape. And so it ends up being this constant reminder of like, I should not eat this food ever again. It is incredibly disappointing. Excuse me. It's incredibly disappointing that I can't eat it, but it causes violent issues, and that's not good. If you can relate to 4 or 5 of these, of the 8 that I talked about, then you might have a little bit of an issue. If that's the case, then maybe I have a little bit of an issue and I care not to admit it. Ultimately, with me, I do find a balance of moderation. I trend toward eating healthy the majority of the time, like 80% of the time. I am fueling myself with foods that are going to actually fuel myself rather than things that are not going to help me at all. Excuse me. So that's kind of me at my endpoint. So law of addiction, why you might not be able to eat normally again. Now, one of the most important lessons here that we can talk about is the law of addiction. What it is administration of a drug to an addict can cause reestablishment of chemical dependency upon the addictive substance. So, sugar, if you've caught the news in the last decade, they keep comparing it to crack cocaine and other very addictive chemical substances and the dependence upon it. And so sugar is a very chemically dependent food that can really cause you great issues. So that's the law of addiction. Note that if you've been off of it and you come back on, it's like smoking. I don't smoke, so I don't really know 100%, but I know of people who smoked in the past, try and quit. Then they get that hit of cigarette and they're back on it. Now, how to know if it's worth the sacrifice of avoiding these certain foods, okay? Ultimately, completely avoiding junk food may seem impossible. These foods are everywhere. They're a major part of our culture. You can't even turn on TV or anywhere without seeing ads or them in the things that you're viewing, okay? So this is something you'll really think about because it's never going to stop. It's always going to be around. It's a cheap, easy food. Sugar makes a significant amount of money for those who produce it and make it and sell it. And so it's not going anywhere, okay? But one of the decisions that you need to make is, should I just stop doing it cold turkey and never have them again? If you do this, then it can make it a lot easier of a choice for you to do. So I always tell the people that I have that smoke, that I have as clients, some of it's a mindset belief. Like, let's not think about quitting. Let's think about excuse me. Fatigue, man. I tell you, it's like 10:30, ready to go to bed. Excuse me. Occasionally I yawn. I think it's from talking too much. I like to talk, so pardon me. And go back to the smoking. It's not about quitting smoking, but maybe you need to consider just being a non-smoker. That shift in mindset makes things significantly easier because non-smokers don't smoke. People who quit smoking, that still kind of leaves the door unlocked to be able to go back to smoking. So making that firm decision to quit is a really good, easy way to justify, not even have to justify anything and just not have it, not even let it be an issue. Okay. Um, you may know someone who just quit cold turkey on something, and they've been widely successful. We've had a lot of other people who have not been successful, and they end up having an issue. So what you can do in this event is knowing if it's worth the sacrifice is really about making a list, pros and cons. If you know the pros and cons, then you'll be able to really know if this is going to be the right choice for you to stick to, especially if you made that decision to quit. So pros might be something like I'll lose weight, I'll live longer, I'll have more energy, I'll feel better every day, etc., etc. Cons, I won't be able to eat ice cream with my family, no cookies on Christmas. I might have to explain my food choices, especially in social dilemmas and events and gatherings and with other people. The food choices you make definitely are apparent to others. Now, if you firmly establish this and it's not an issue, then I can totally see why it just isn't really an issue. So that if you just don't eat ice cream at family events or anything, it's not a big deal then. A quick caveat, anything that I ever talk about, teach, preach, and kind to get you to follow is more of a moderate approach, really just taking into account that this food is something that you're probably going to be eating at some point. Just going back to the alcohol example, chances are you're probably going to have alcohol. Chances are you might end up overdoing it, and you know how to need to get around that typical situation. So chances are you might have ice cream, you might have cookies again. You just need to know how to handle it and be appropriate your choices, the remainder of your choices for the remainder of the day, the time, the week, and all. Excuse me. Prepare yourself and set a date. Okay. This is important that you're preparing and making a transition and making it easy as possible. So ultimately what we're looking for first are trigger foods, okay? So trigger foods, you really want to kind of write down a list of foods that you tend to crave or binge on. And these are things that you should avoid at all costs. Don't buy them. Don't bring them in the house. Don't put them at work. Avoid them at work. If possible, like say cake. Avoid that like the plague. Just don't go into the break room for that day or 2 days or however long it's in there. That ends up being significantly better for you, so you don't have to worry about that then. If you end up going to fast food places, convenience sells all the time. Okay, and that's what fast food is selling: is convenience. Not selling food; they're selling convenience. So quick meal in a hurry. Okay. Now, a simple thing, so it's not like you'll never eat fast food again. Maybe you're one of those, like, I'm not doing it, and that's perfectly fine. But some of us, like me included even, occasionally end up at a fast food joint, and you know what you can eat and what you can't. So a couple of things to do is write down a list of the foods that are healthy at these places. Do some research. A lot of these places have nutritional values up on their website, and they will allow you to shift your place with how you react to food. Having stuff planned, prepared, always, again, makes things super duper easy. What to eat. Think about what foods you're going to eat. Preferably eating healthier foods and having these things prepared already for you to eat on a regular basis. We've got some taking your pros and cons list that you made up. Like, what are the pros of quitting this? What are the cons of quitting? And then putting that list in multiple different areas. So this can be like on your fridge, in your car, in your purse, in your wallet, wherever at work. And then what you can do is there'll be a constant reminder to not choose to fall, to not struggle anymore. But if you end up struggling with food addiction, it's and you can identify with this, it might not be in your best sense to actually go on a diet. Okay, something that's going to put weight loss in the top priority, and you might want to kind of shift your focus to dealing with these issues. So again, food addiction being a big issue, a serious one, and getting help and seeking that and overcoming this issue is really hard enough, and there's no reason to add hunger and additional restrictions to the mix, so that you ultimately just make things harder, and you actually set yourself up for failure if you're not like rock solid in mind. But then you end up leaning toward again, motivation and willpower, and that stuff is never going to last for you. As far as preparing yourself, lastly, like if you are going to do cold turkey, set a date in the near future, and avoid these foods, and don't eat them again. So one that's super popular is pop. I'm never eating pop. Or again, fast food. I'm never eating fast food. And you've heard people say, I haven't had McDonald's in 10 years. Awesome. That's fantastic. Okay. I'm glad that you're doing that. And so that just keeps that momentum rolling for you to sustain that and have ultimate success with it. When all else fails, we need to seek some help. If you end up relapsing and losing control over consuming these foods that you're off limits, guess what? You're not alone. Relapses are more the rule when it comes to addictions and not the exception, unfortunately. Most people have several failed attempts before they manage to succeed in the long run. Maybe they're testing, trying different ways, theories, and we can equate that in many different areas of life. Just try again, and you'll soon figure out the way that's going to work best for you. But what we want to make sure that if you keep failing and you keep struggling with getting back on horse, so to speak, it might be time to find that help you need. Find support groups, find health professionals. There are groups out there that you can meet physically, meet online, and then we know that identifying with these groups helps in a big way keep you from relapsing. Exercise groups keep you motivated and moving. That's just a quick side note. Like, it's important to be around people that are going to. I'm a health professional in capacity. I can help quite a bit. I can create some community, can create some support and accountability for you, and that is important. So what I want to do here is wrap up lastly with 5 more ways, kind of reiterating some of the points that I made previously, to overcoming food addiction. It's a process. It's one worth taking the time and effort to overcome it, because you get freedom from food, and that's ultimately what I want. Freedom through flexibility is one of the booklets I put out, and I find that if you understand food, you understand the concept of it, what it is, how it works together, then you will have long-term success in moderation and have the flexibility and freedom to eat the foods that you enjoy and live in the body, the look and the feel that you want. Taking the power back with food often requires quite an approach to get to the full recovery. So what we do is first develop a healthy relationship with food. You can do this a wide number of different ways, from like the things that I'm obviously coaching and preaching about. You can do, there's lots of different groups, like even like Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig or any of that stuff. There is plenty of information, resources out there for you to get your hands on that will allow you to start developing that better relationship with food. Setting boundaries with unhealthy food. So we want to make sure that these foods will trigger you and can often create a relapse. So we need to make sure boundaries are set in place. So I just don't go into the break room, or when these comes around, I just don't have any. This will help eliminate temptation and get you through to that, get you through past that. And then even if you have set boundaries that allow for the food, then we just need to simply account for it, not make a big deal. Again, like ice cream, if you really want it, you can have it and still make progress. But again, half a cup is the serving size, not a half a gallon. Follow a structured meal plan. Okay, I talked about that previously, is having a formula for you that works great, that fits into your lifestyle, that makes sense so that you can eat in a regular pattern of behavior. So for me, like I usually don't eat until about 11 or 12. Then I'll eat again around like 2 or 3-ish. Then I'll eat again a quick meal, usually around like 6-ish because I'm working. Then I'll have something in around like 9 or 10. So I'm usually eating about 4 meals that are about 800 to 1,000 calories generally, and that kind of fill me up throughout the day and get me to meet my needs. Live healthy, learn healthy coping strategies. Address the reasons for turning to food to cope. We want to make sure that we understand healthy coping mechanisms and strategies that will allow you to live healthier and more active and dealing with your emotions and all those things. And then lastly is, again, seeking professional help. Beating food addiction is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It can if you simply decide. Decisions are made split second. Right now, you can decide and forever change. It doesn't take forever to do. Boom. If you're strong, you're convicted, you have a big enough reason why, and all your I should do this turn into absolute musts, then boom. Sound like Tony Robbins right now. Boom. You'll make that shift. But if you can't quite get over that hump, then finding someone else to help will create a lot of support, accountability, motivation. Take that willpower and really use it to your positive benefit. So, hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found benefit. I'm sure we all can identify with some of the symptoms of food addiction. It's heavily marketed. There's billions of dollars spent every year on food and marketing it, so that your best bet is just to detach from any type of media, internet, TV, radio, and then you might be actually okay, as long as you avoid the food stores. Maybe you just need to do like live on a farm and kind of grow your own food, your own have your chickens and cows and all that stuff, and you can just go live by yourself. Then your capacity to have to deal with this stuff is greatly reduced. So kind of joking there, but kind of not either. So I hope you enjoyed this. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and apply this information. Use it to your benefit and learn and grow. Peace.